Hi, Mr. Sword. If you're not Mr. Sword, don't listen to this section. I'm looking at you. So hi. This is very late, and I'm aware that it's late, and I'm so sorry about that. I hated what I did twice so much that I restarted again. Well, I didn't really restart, I just rewrote my script again. But other than that, yeah, I'm sorry that this is late. I hope you saw my email. I don't even know if this will be done by 6. If it's not, fuck. And that's about it. I'm going to provide two Google Doc links. One of them's going to be like my first brain dump, and then the second one's going to be like more filtered. The filtered one is now longer because I slapped the script onto the end of it, but I'll probably put the script into a different document by the time you're listening to this. So after a little bit, I have found it in my bones to finally make a decent script and record this. And so, yeah, this is for my LDA. You're never gonna hear from me ever again. I'm not real. You can't. No, I'm not real. So let's take this one at a time. I hope it's funny. It's probably not going to be funny because I don't know how to make things funny on purpose. Yeah. The first thing I saw when Trump was reelected was the suicide hotline number. Most, if not all, of my friends were posting about it on their Insta stories, and strangers on Tumblr were making long posts of it. With this followed words of affirmation, lines of text telling me everything is going to be okay, to live in spite of this outcome or to outlive it. So, my first response was to believe I was in danger because I was told I was in danger, so I assumed I was. And then I felt frustrated about how this country itself decided to elect someone like Trump. Morals are a low ground, but at the very least, I assumed people would be reasonable. This LDA was meant to be about accessibility to trans healthcare, but if people are telling me that I'm in danger are correct, then there won't be any trans people or healthcare to worry about. However, I live in the painfully liberal state of California, so I assumed it was human decency to not want people to die, but in reality, I'm surrounded by other liberal queer people. I see this as a danger, so is it really? And if it is a danger, what do we do about it? So let's start easy. What is Trump's opinion on trans people? That should be straightforward enough, right? So, one of the most common clips that can be played about Trump was during this year, during the Harris v. Trump debate, where he says this.
Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
In fact, from October 7th to 20th, according to the Media Project, 41% of his ads were about gender identity, and around 80% of MAGA ads mentioned it. This isn't looking good in trans people's favor, but let's be fair for a moment. This can just be an act as a smear campaign against Harris because she briefly mentioned wanting to let prisoners transition. However, he does claim children go to school and undergo surgery and get trans. So I think we can agree that he doesn't like trans people. But what does he plan on doing about this? Well, in this short little video of 3 minutes and 23 seconds from February 1st, 2023 on his site, he talks about what steps he wants to take about what he calls the left-wing gender insanity. I'm going to highlight some of the 12 things that he wants to do, and I want you to note the phrasing that he uses for it. Actually, you don't even have to note. I'm going to highlight it and mark it out in front of you. For you. Just for you. So let's start with the first point. 1. Revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care, a process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. So here's what his policy is saying, and we've highlighted a few things, but we'll get to that in a moment. The stop motion wasn't working. So what it's basically just saying is that they're cutting off transitioning for minors. It's simple, it's straightforward, but he says it in this long-winded paragraph because it's easier to emotionally charge it. That's his purpose, that's his point, to make it politically relevant, to make his followers believe that this is an important matter. So instead of just saying we're cutting off transitioning for minors, which sounds bad for them, he's saying things like revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming, quotations, care, a process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, implying that we are like giving them and forcefully mutating their physical appearance. This is just talking about HRT and side effects. He mentions this in a later policy that I'm not covering because we don't have enough time, but he sees mutating as if this isn't a natural process that your body does, and uses the words minor children. He uses the word minor children a lot, and you think that he cares a little bit too much about minor children. Luckily, his several felonies don't have to do with children, I'm pretty sure. Anyhow, the reason why he says minor children is to make it seem more emotionally charged. He's trying to imply that they don't have a sense of will, because they're minor children. You can infer minor just by the fact of saying children, but he insists on placing this modifier of minor. There's also examples of him using tagging that can be shown in other proposals, like Proposal 4. 4. Pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. And so in his fourth policy, when we look at it, he states that he's passing laws to prohibit child mutilation in all 50 states. This is a good example of him tagging something. He gives it a label and to make it more identifiable. When he says child mutilation, we know that he's talking about transitioning for children. He's talking about gender-affirming surgery, because several times has he called it child mutilation. But if you look at it without looking too deep into it, it's objectively really funny, because he's saying basically that what he's implying is that there's not a law already prohibiting child mutilation. There is a law prohibiting child mutilation. Mutilating children is illegal. Sorry, I think I forgot a phrase. He says child sexual mutilation. I'm pretty sure that's still illegal. But when he talks about child mutilation, he's talking about gender affirming. That's so. Oh god, my handwriting's so bad. Don't worry about it. Surgery. And so when he says child mutilation, he's trying to charge it. So he's tagging it with something. It's like how he calls immigrants aliens. When he says that immigrants equal aliens, we know now we have the association of whenever he says aliens, he's talking about immigrants. And what this tagging does is that it gives a negative connotation to the matter. And so now his followers and other people have this connection of child sexual mutilation to gender-affirming surgery. And that's purposeful. He's purposefully manipulative about how he tags things, because he needs people to look at things his way. And finally, the 8th one on his list. Direct the Department of Education to inform states and schools districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will face severe consequences, including potential civil rights violation for sex discrimination and elimination of federal funding. He brought this up recently in a speech for the NRA in May of 2024.
On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children.
It's possible he's going to carry through with his other 11 points of stopping to, the left wing, gender insanity. Was it gender insanity? I don't know. I am insanity. This is against one of his current policies on his site about the freedom of speech. He states that he's going to stop federal funding for all nonprofits and academic programs engaging in censorship. Is school not an academic program? And is this not censorship? He's trying to get schools to stop talking about trans people. Isn't that the blatantest of censorship as it comes? I think I have shown enough to say that the fear trans people hold is fair, despite them maybe not fully knowing what the extent of Trump is planning to do. The upsetting part of this entire thing is the fact that he frames it so purposefully to be politically charged that it sparks his followers to be passionate. So, although the first question about this was how do we protect trans people, the next question is how do we get people to believe that trans people are human? There's this Jubilee video where this 19-year-old debates with 20 Trump supporters, and none of them can cite facts well. It's almost frustrating to watch these full-grown adults argue, and you can see the life slowly drain out of the teenager as he bickers with people whose only defense is, no, that's not true. The effects of Trump as a politician are immense and scary, and encourages a lot of hate. Just like how he labeled transitional surgery as mutilation, he has labeled himself as a danger to minorities. And the effect is real as well. After this year's elections result, the Trevor Project reported a 700% increase in texts and calls to their LGBTQ suicide hotline. In 2016, CNN reported on an uptick in the National Suicide Hotline, and their spokeswoman, Liz Eddy, states that a key word in these texts were LGBTQ and scared. What do you do about this? What can you do about this? I'm being told at the age of 17 to be afraid of my life. The election didn't affect me as much as it did others, but it still makes me paranoid. I'm worried about immigration policy sending away my mother who legally immigrated here. I'm worried about immigration policy sending away my closest friend, whose country recently labeled trans people as a terrorist organization. He's trans. This project's meant to be about being politically active, but what can you do about being politically active? I'm submitting this 5 days late with no end on the horizon. There was two versions before this one, and I hated both so much I scrapped it. So what am I supposed to do? I'm just 17. I'm applying for colleges. I have friends who just got accepted into a CSU, and both of them are trans. I was told to be afraid, so I am afraid. But I didn't know why I was meant to be afraid. So I started researching for this LDA, and I found out. And now you know as well. So what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about a government that was meant to protect their people, turning inwards to attack a very small minority? A current ongoing Supreme Court case had an oral argument this week. This is the first time a trans attorney has argued in front of this court. The lawsuit was made by a group of trans kids and their parents after being denied gender-affirming care despite puberty blockers and HRT is being still available for cis kids in Tennessee. This is big news, important news, actually. For the first time, trans people are being seen by their government. The Supreme Court saw it fit to be tried in front of them. This brings hope. In an article about this case and what Trump might do against trans people, Kate Redburn is interviewed and she states that the best way to defend against this is to place trans rights and trans care into state constitutions. For once, Federalism is working for minorities. And so, this is my call to action. Write letters. Many, many letters. Not to the federal government, but to the state and local governments where you live. Tell them your stories. Tell them why you need them to help you. To help every single trans person in the state you live in. To help them through transition, to let them survive without hating their own skin. I don't care if you're in a deep red state or if you're in the most blue state there could be. Check what rights you have and write asking for more. Petition, protest, anything. Because the next 4 years will be rough. But they'll be rougher if you do nothing about it. Thank you.